All right, let's talk about Pat Narduzzi's favorite topic here on the Thursday edition of the Morning Pit. Injuries. Hooray. Can I do like balloons? What does double peace signs do? Nothing? What about one peace sign? Does that make anything happen? No? Thumbs up? Thumbs up balloons? Anything? No. What happened to all my fun on-screen balloons and fireworks and laser shows and all those things? Look, Pat Narduzzi loves to talk about injuries. Of course, he doesn't. But we will talk about injuries because Pitt has been hit pretty hard by the injury bug to the tune of about 30 games missed by two deep players so far this season, a number that will certainly grow because a few of those guys are out for the season. But who is Pitt missing? Who has Pitt been missing? How have the replacements been doing in their place? And what should we make of the availability report? The first one for this week will come out tonight. Next one tomorrow, and then the game day report on Saturday before Pitt takes on Florida State and Tallahassee at noon. So injuries all the way around. That's what we're talking about here today. Hopefully Pat Narduzzi doesn't listen to this episode because it'll probably make his ears bleed. This is the Thursday edition of the Morning Pit, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, I'm not the type to really say, I'm not the type to draw many conclusions about injuries. I think anytime there's a rash of injuries or more than a few, or they seem to happen in bunches or something like that, I think, we look for answers. Oh, is there a problem with the strength and conditioning program? Is there a problem with this? Is there overworked or whatever it might be? And I tend to just think, it just happens. Football's what was the Mike Ditka quote? It's not a contact sport. It's a collision sport. You've got, people who are very big crashing into each other 90 times, or 80 times or 100 times or 50 times or whatever it may be over the course of an afternoon, running at high speeds and, colliding over and over and over again. I hurt myself walking down the steps or, tripping over my bed or something or getting out of bed. I hurt myself. So I'm by no means a prime physical specimen, but it's, you can imagine when you put these athletes on the field together and they're running into each other for 3 hours or 3.5 or 4 hours, guys are going to get hurt. And it's really, I'm not going to say fluke or luck or something like that, but it's all just, do you hit each other in the exact right way to cause the bone or the muscle or whatever it is to move in the exact right way that you end up with an injury? And a lot of times, I think there probably are times over the years where the strength and conditioning program might not be up to snuff, where guys are put in harm's way, either being overworked in the strength and conditioning program so they're more prone to injury, or, not prepared in certain conditioning ways that they end up cramping more or, whatever. But if a guy's knee is going to get blown out because it gets bent the wrong way, I'm not sure what you can do in the weight room during the offseason to better prepare for that. You know what I mean? If a guy's going to get hit in the head and get a concussion that's going to keep him out for a few weeks, I'm not sure if they did, it's from doing too many back squats in June or something. You know what I mean? Think of a good example of a recent injury that we saw. You saw Keith Gouveia, right? Keith Gouveia had to get carted off with his leg in an air cast after that injury against Louisville. That didn't happen because he was running too many sprints at Flagstaff Hill, or not enough sprints at Flagstaff Hill. Injuries just happen in sports. And sometimes teams will have more in one year than others. And I haven't compared Pitt to other teams, but Pitt is certainly dealing with a lot of injuries right now. I went on my old legal pad here, and this whole paper is not filled up with injury information, but a lot of it is, to look at two deep players that Pitt has lost so far this season. Guys who I think, they're either on the two deep now or they would have been on the two deep if they didn't suffer a season-ending injury in training camp, right? And you add them all up, and you've got literally 30 games missed by two deep players, a number that is, counting. A number that will continue increasing because a few of these guys are out for the season. Keith Gouveia, starting left guard, is out for the season. Jeremiah Marcelin and Jaden Bonsu, two guys that were expected to be, two deep linebackers, top backups, probably seeing the field in every game on on defense, not just special teams. They're out for the season. And so each of those guys, Bonsu and Marcelin, have missed 5 games. That number is going to keep going. Eventually they will have missed 13. right? Keith Gouveia has missed 1 game. That number is going to keep growing. Eventually, he'll have missed 9 games. And so where they're at right now with 30 games missed is a number that's only going to grow over the course of the season. But it's already just 5 games in, you're talking about a lot of missed action. To wit, Desmond Reed has missed the last 2 games with an injury. Jake Overman, the tight end, missed 2 games and really just played limited reps in the last 2 games. Really didn't get on the field a whole lot against Louisville or Boston College. So, I mean, he has been pretty limited since the season opener. Jeff Percy left the last game, and we're not counting this as a game missed because he did play the first possession against Boston College, but he got hurt. We're sort of monitoring his progress. Pitt's starting left tackle there. Keith Gouveia, like we mentioned, missed 1 game after suffering a season-ending injury against Louisville. Flipping over to defense, and this is where that's actually all the offensive guys. 4 guys who have missed, and I really can't even include Percy. He hasn't missed a full game yet. I mean, we'll see what his availability is like for Saturday. But right now, they've only had 3 two-deep players on offense who have missed 1 full game. And I mean, I guess you can include Jackson Brown. He would probably be a two-deep offensive lineman. I think he is. Is he listed on Pitt's two-deep? I believe he is. I had the depth chart in front of me, but then I changed to a different page. Jackson Brown is listed as the backup left guard right now. He, for the Boston College game, was ruled out. So, I mean, you could technically include him as well if you were so inclined. But we'll just say, I mean, Reed, Overman, and Gouveia have all missed at least 1 game. And those are starters. Those aren't even like 2 deep guys. Those are starters that have missed time, and then we'll see what happens with Percy. The bigger losses and absences, at least in terms of the number, is on defense, where, I mean, you could pretty much work through almost every position group on the defense, and they've lost multiple 2-deep players for multiple games. You started defensive end Jaden Moore, who's still listed as an or starter at defensive end, has not played in a single game this season. I don't even think he's dressed for a single game this season, but he's been listed on the injury reports the last 2 weeks as being out, so at least they're acknowledging that. Blaine Spires got hurt against Louisville. He missed the Boston College game. Ditto for Zach Crothers. Those are 2 more 2-deep guys. Spires as a starter, Crothers as a backup defensive end. So that's 3 guys who were expected to be 2-deep defensive ends have missed a combined total of 7 games. And we'll see what Spires and Crothers are able to do this week, if they're able to play against Florida State. At linebacker, like I mentioned, Marcelin and Bonsu, 2 top guys. I mean, Marcelin would be your number 2 middle linebacker. Bonsu would be a reserve outside linebacker. They probably play a decent amount. You probably wouldn't end up in a situation where Rasheem Biles and Kyle Lewis and Braylon Lovelace are playing 85 snaps or whatever it was against West Virginia and Louisville. You'd be able to get a little bit more rotation out there with Marcelin and Bonsu, but you lost them in training camp, and now your depth obviously is very tested at linebacker. You go to cornerback, Tamon Lynham and Rashad Battle, your 2 starters this year, have both missed time. Lynham has missed the last 3 games. Battle has missed the last 2. Or no, he missed 2 and then he returned for this past game. He returned for the... I'm sorry. He played in both ACC games. I got mixed up on which games he missed. He got hurt after the first game, or maybe in the opener against Duquesne, and then did not play against Central Michigan or West Virginia, but I believe he's been back. He has played in 3 games. Pitt has this handy chart in their notes that lists like game-by-game participation. Yeah, Battle missed the Central Michigan and West Virginia games. He returned and played against Louisville and Boston College, but he missed 2 games in there. At safety, they haven't had quite... Oh, another corner, Rashawn Murray hasn't played in the last 2 games. That's been sort of an interesting situation. Haven't seen him out there since the West Virginia game. He has not played. I don't think he's dressed for those either. I mean, he's been in uniform. Like, he's had his jersey, but he hasn't had pads or helmet or anything. At safety, they haven't had any missed games yet. Javon McIntyre, I think, only played 9 snaps against Boston College. He seemed to get hurt early in the Louisville game, left that game, and then, like I say, only played 9 snaps against BC, and that was mostly in the Delta package, the 3rd down defensive sub package. And then Cruz Brookins left this past game, left the Boston College game. And this is really one to keep an eye on for this weekend, because obviously Brookins is a very important player, one of Pitt's best overall players, one of their best defenders. I mean, it's either him or Rasheem Biles through 5 games of who's been Pitt's best defensive player. Cruz Brookins is right up there. He left that last game after he was defending a pass on, I think, 3rd down, seemed to land on his shoulder awkwardly, and that's no good. You need Cruz Brookins out there, or else you're going to be relying on Josh Garrier, the true freshman, and potentially, Allen Bryant might be out there, Kavir Baines Marquez, but you need either McIntyre or Brookins, and ideally you'd have both. Right now, both of those guys are kind of banged up. And then even on special teams, Nile Upa, the long snapper, got hurt. He missed the Boston College game. So, you add all this together, you've got 30 games missed by 2 deep players so far. And that's a problem. That's a problematic. And, we've seen how the coaches have had to deal with it at defensive end, moving Isaiah Neal inside, from defensive tackle outside to defensive end. And it worked. They were able to get away with it against Boston College. BC could never really run the ball, and so they were in bad 3rd down situations. They missed open receivers, and Boston College's offense was a mess. And some of that's a credit to Pitt, and some of that's a credit to Boston College just being a mess. Florida State's going to be a much more difficult challenge. I like Isaiah Neal a lot. I think he's a really good player. I think he could probably succeed at end or tackle. Putting him at end against a scrambling quarterback is going to be a real challenge because it takes responsibility and discipline. And Isaiah Neal has shown himself to be a lot of things, but sometimes that discipline is a little bit lacking. And sometimes that's to his advantage because he creates chaos on the field with the way he plays and how he goes about it out there. But you need to be disciplined to contain Thomas Castellanos. You can't let him get out and run. You can't let him get around the edge because that's how he's going to break a lot of plays. I think he leads the ACC in scramble yards, according to Pro Football Focus. I mean, that's what he does. He's thrown a lot of interceptions, but he's also done a pretty good job keeping plays alive, extending plays, and getting out and making plays with his feet. And that'll come down to defensive ends and perimeter defenders overall being responsible, being disciplined, and making sure he doesn't get out there and get around that edge. And so you'd like to have Blaine Spires back for this game. You'd like to have Zach Crothers back for this game. Not that I think Neal can't do the job outside, but I think he can be really effective inside, and maybe even more effective. And I think your best defensive line has, Jimmy Scott and Blaine Spires and Zach Crothers playing defensive end. Ideally, Jaden Moore at some point. That's a loss that I think has really hurt this unit. And then Sean Fitzsimmons and Francis Brew and Nick James and Isaiah Neal playing inside. That's your best defensive line, but you need to get Spires and Crothers back in order to do that. And if you don't have those guys, at least one of them, you're probably going to have Neal outside again. And that's a challenging situation. The linebacker depth is what it is. We've seen it all season. We talked about it all season. We talked about it since training camp when the injuries to Marcelin and Bonsu were announced. That's just what it is. And then at that safety spot, you need Brookins and McIntyre. You really need Brookins. And that's not to dismiss Javon McIntyre. I think he's good too. But I think Cruz Brookins, again, is playing at a really high level this season. And they're going to need that. You can't. The thing I like about Cruz Brookins, I think he's a really sound tackler. I mean, he's really good at breaking guys down and getting them to the ground. You can't have missed tackles and broken tackles and yards after contact with an athletic team like Florida State. I feel like this is going to be the kind of game where you need to be really on point with your assignments, really sharp with your tackling. You can't miss tackles. You can't give them extra yards. You can't make this easy for them at all. You've got to make Florida State earn everything they get. And if you take out a short tackler, a guy like Cruz Brookins, that's going to make that much more difficult for you in this game. Now, tonight you'll get the initial availability report from the ACC. New requirement this year, the ACC is requiring teams before conference games to release availability reports. They don't call them injury reports. They're availability reports, which I think provides some cover for, you don't have to necessarily announce how someone's hurt or why someone's out. It could be eligibility. It could be whatever it might be, personal reasons, what have you, but it's availability. And you release the first availability report tonight, 2 days before the game. There'll be an updated availability report tomorrow, the day before the game, and then there'll be the game day report released 2 hours before kickoff. that kind of is the final word on where everybody is. Now, the reports that they release tonight and tomorrow, players will be available, probable, questionable, or out. On game day, you're either available, out, or a game time decision. And they really want you to keep those game time decisions to a minimum. Don't want a lot of guys going out there saying they're game time decisions on half their roster or whatever it might be. What's interesting to note, and what you'll be interesting to watch and follow, and I talked about this on the message board, and I've written about it. When you see that first availability report tonight, all right, you'll see guys listed as questionable, and you'll see guys listed as out. Those are the two that you might see a probable, although Pitt's only used the probable designation once over the last 2 games. They've listed 30 players on their availability reports at some point, either the initial report, the updated report, or the game day report in the last 2 games. They've listed 30 players. Only one has been listed as probable. That was Sincere Lee before the Louisville game. He wasn't even listed as anything before the Boston College game. But you'll see it tonight. Most guys, they'll probably either be questionable or out. If the last 2 weeks have shown us anything, if you see a guy listed as questionable tonight or tomorrow, he's probably not going to play. As a matter of fact, Pitt has used the questionable designation 12 times, either on an initial report or an updated report over the last 2 weeks. And out of those 12 guys who were listed as questionable at some point during the week, 10 of them ended up being ruled out or not playing during the game. There were a couple who went from questionable to a game-time decision. Tamon Lynham each of the last 2 weeks, and then Javon McIntyre last week. Lynham didn't play in either one of those games, didn't even dress. Javon McIntyre did play. So with Lynham missing twice, and then all the other guys who were listed as questionable, Desmond Reed both weeks, Zach Crothers last week, Blaine Spires last week, Rashawn Murray both weeks. Neely was listed as questionable last week. Jackson Brown last week was listed as questionable in the updated report. Was there one other? I think that might be it. Those 10 did not play. They were ruled out. Ultimately did not play or were ruled out or they were game time decisions and they did not play. The only times guys have been listed as questionable at some point over the last 2 weeks and they ended up playing was Javon McIntyre last week when he was a game time decision and ended up playing, like I say, here, I have the snap count in front of me. He played 9 snaps. The other time one of these guys was a game-time decision was Jake Overman before the Louisville game. Jake Overman before the Louisville game did not show up on the initial availability report. He showed up on Friday as questionable. And then on the game day report, he was listed as available. He ended up playing 3 snaps against Louisville. So 12 guys listed as questionable at some point over the last 2 weeks in the availability reports. 10 of them did not play. The other 2 who did play played a combined total of 12 snaps. So if you end up being questionable at some point on the availability reports, chances are really good you are not going to play. So when you see the availability report tonight, whoever's listed on there, if they're listed as questionable, you probably can assume they're not going to play. Now, there might be some exceptions. Maybe guys rebound well and heal up and they get ready. Chances are that's probably not. If history has been any indication, chances are they're probably not going to play. All right, we'll see what it is. The availability report, I think it comes out tonight at like 8 o'clock. We'll have that on Panther-Lair.com. Then we'll have the updated availability report tomorrow night on Panther-Lair.com, and then the game day report on Saturday when Pitt, 2 hours before Pitt kicks off against Florida State. So make sure you stay tuned for all that. Of course, stay tuned for the Morning Pitt mailbag tomorrow. There's still time to get your questions in on the message boards at Panther-Lair.com. Love to get your question and answer as many as we can in the Morning Pitt tomorrow. All right, thanks for tuning in today. Make sure you like this video and subscribe. Hope you've had a great week so far. Enjoy your Thursday. We'll catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pitt mailbag right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.